Thank you, everyone. As my colleague said, my name is Stefan Siegel. A very German-sounding name. I'm actually Italian. Nobody's perfect. And about 5 years ago, as she said, I was working in New York on Wall Street for a big evil investment bank that no longer exists. And one of my tasks there was to advise public-listed fashion houses in terms of acquisitions of smaller design brands. And I had a lot of friends who were studying fashion. At the same time, I saw the movements and the trends of these big conglomerates, and there was something that we just couldn't understand. My brother and I thought, why is it so hard for young emerging fashion designers who come out of schools like Antwerp, Central St. Martin's in London, or Parsons or FIT in New York, why is it so hard for them to actually get seen and to have this opportunity to actually land a job or actually sell or actually just do their own marketing? At the same point, we were looking at the music industry, and there were some platforms, and you remember 5 years ago, MySpace or Last.fm, these were sort of platforms where you would find the coolest bands, the coolest DJs, and it was quite easy to find these grassroots talents, but for fashion, it was literally impossible. And as many of you, probably you have a lot of ideas on a Sunday afternoon, you think I should open a restaurant there, and I should do that, and maybe I should quit my boring job. This is exactly what we did. On a Sunday afternoon, I decided that's it. On Monday, I walked in and said, this is it, we're starting not just a label. Now, of course, 5 years later, and a lot of headaches, a lot of fights, a lot of girlfriends who left, I find myself here speaking about a community of almost 14,000 emerging designers in 106 countries that we have brought together over the last couple of years. It was a startup company. We bootstrapped it from day one. And our idea was, let's just create a simple platforms where young designers can sign up in a free of cost environment, just upload their collection and nothing else. This was our idea. The one problem that I, of course, had was, well, when we start having all these designers on our platform, how are we going to earn money? And this was a big issue, and unfortunately, we ran out of money after a year, which, coming from the finance industry, was a bit of an issue as well. But our platform now, after 5 years, has become a brand-building element. It has become a platform that discovers, nurtures, and connects these designers with the industry and the world. And of course, a lot of people ask us, who are these designers? How do you proceed in terms of your quality control? Can anyone access? The one thing that we said, we want the best designers. We want those who have a story. We want those who are artisans. We want those who create craft. But we are not going to segment or sort of say no to designers who come from certain countries or cities or are not part of the fashion system. We just said the only thing we look at are designers who are great, and it doesn't matter where they come from. In this case, I featured one of your recent graduates from Antwerp from last year. The one thing that never changed on our platform, and I think this is where we go into sort of the social enterprise that Not Just a Label has become, is something called a standardized designer profile. Now, designers never like the word standard. They all want to be unique. But at the same time, we're dealing with an industry who appreciates the standard. And I'm sure if you ever researched websites of artists, you've been quite bored at looking at sort of the flash screens loading or the contact forms not working or email addresses not being there. This is what we try to do. We simply display designers, and they are allowed to showcase their collections. They're able to showcase their fashion films and to just tell a little bit about themselves. There's one button on there, which is not a great piece of technology, but it's called Email Designer, and it's a simple button where the industry can contact these designers. And on average, we have about 1,000 requests per day going to these designers from all around the world, and that starts with celebrities, going down to the biggest fashion magazines around the world, the buyers, the press, and people who just want to do research as well. The online shop is something that we introduced a year later when we ran out of money, of course, when we realized, okay, we have to find some way to actually monetize our great idea. We had about 2,000 designers, and we realized it's actually fantastic what the designers create, but it's so hard to find the products of these designers. They run around the world, they create these fantastic samples, but not many around the world have the opportunity to travel to London or to Paris to actually access these ideas. And what we created is an online store that works in a way that designers sell directly from studios around the world and somehow bypass that fashion system that we all know, that is so expensive, that is so slow, that is so against what a young designer is all about. So these designers have been selling with us over the years. And of course, us as a company, we have increased as well. We're now 15 people. We still offer a whole range of services to emerging designers, still free of cost. So my mission was always, we need to be free for designers simply because we want to support them. But almost like a sort of Robin Hood effect, we charge the corporates the double price in return. And here's a couple of sort of clients we work with. But of course, the company has grown. I think there's two huge factors that I would like to speak about, and that are sort of the reason why we're here today. One, of course, is individuality or emerging designers. Why are emerging designers, and I think we've heard it before from Walter, why are emerging designers the plat du jour now? Why are they so unique? Why does everyone want to work with these designers who have become the rock stars? One of them is, of course, individuality. Individuality has become key. Fashion is more easily accessible, so people want to be different. I think we all have seen that happening in sort of the hospitality industry with food. We all want to have something different. We want to stand out. At the same time, we're looking at authentic luxury again. I think we're looking at the process of increased scrutiny of product. People are looking at value for money again. We want to stand out. We want to have also a story to tell. And I think maybe we're also a bit sick of going into the shops and just buying the pure textiles and the pure fashion, but there's nothing attached to these pieces. So we lost this whole notion of craft. And I think our designers, these emerging designers who are spread all around the world, and with 106 countries, we're not only speaking about the 4 fashion capitals, we're speaking about 50% designers coming from emerging countries. I think these designers encapsulate somehow the uniqueness of fashion, but also the creativity that maybe we have lost over the years. The other big factor is, of course, the digital environment. And I think the digital environment changed so much that, and this is usually the slide where I lose a lot of attention of people because there's something moving, but I think the digital channel presents infinite opportunities for creative talent. Look at our company. We have never accepted investment. We have started almost with no cash, but we have made it so far. So what was so unique about our proposition, but also about what young creatives are doing today? I think there's about 500 apps out there that designers or creatives or musicians can use to actually promote their work for free around the world. I think we're about using 10 of them in our company, from Twitter down to Pinterest and Facebook. I'm sure you know them all, but I think there's about 480 other apps that you could actually use to promote your work in Russia, in Brazil, in China. They're all using different apps. And I think fashion presentation has changed. It has changed in terms of fashion film, as we see it here. This is one of our young designers who actually produced this fashion film with a budget of 0. So he started out, and he got a few friends. I think you can create a fashion film now with your iPhone as well. This one was created with a Canon camera. But again, I think you can create an audience simply by using the digital channel in a very intelligent way. And this video alone created 1.1 million views on YouTube, just because it was great content, it was great fashion, and it was a great way of promoting fashion in a different way. And again, we always sort of hear the discussion as before about, will the catwalk survive or not? I think it will, but at the same time, I think, especially the students who I met yesterday at the academy, I think we all have to start thinking about there's a whole world out there. Maybe let's just think about how we can reach them, and if there's different ways than just sort of joining the pilgrimage to Paris and spending a lot of money and joining the lottery and maybe I will make it. So maybe the life of a designer does not have to be the lonely business anymore. I think our designers, usually the lectures we do, they laugh at this slide because they say this is exactly how my evenings look like. But I think if we work as a community, as a social enterprise, if we use social media, if we use the brand ambassadors who help us, I think we can achieve quite a lot. And I think this is what we have done as well. With a community of almost 14,000 designers in over 100 countries, we travel around the world. We travel to about 30 countries each year, and we see these communities popping up. And we see also the rise of the local hero. We see a whole new form of entrepreneurship as well. So what does this decade of transformation actually bring? I think we are now in need of processes that centralize humans. I think it's, again, about the artist. It's about the artisan again. It's about the craft we also want to buy as a consumer. I think we're experiencing this decade of change, and I think the firm of the future will become much more synergistic, collaborative, conducive. We hear the term open source now in the age of sort of global mass surveillance of governments. I think people are looking at what can we do. Our platform, for example, is completely built on open source element on a platform called Drupal. I don't know if you know that one, but I think businesses are becoming much more dynamic, and we're looking also at a new form of marketing. And marketing is not only a purely sort of business strategy element, but I think it has become a way of actually telling our stories again. And we tell our stories by engaging and cultivating. I think we have an increasing complexity, and I think we have to upgrade our marketing capabilities. I remember when I studied economics, our teacher said, or our professor said, if you can sell sands to the Arabs, that's when you're a good salesman. I think it's no longer contemporary, because it almost feels a bit like cheating. On our online shop, we feel like we're sharing these products, and I think if you have the right product and it is authentic, it is ecological, it is somehow timely, I think you don't really need to sell anymore, because the content then will be spread by your brand ambassadors, by bloggers, by people who love what you're doing. And therefore, the retweeting, the sharing, this whole social media, sort of the new wave of word of mouth, I think is doing that job for you. And of course, social media has changed that word of mouth, and I think word of mouth, again, in the same lesson, was always described as that marketing tool that no budget can buy. I think social media is now a bit like word of mouth on drugs. It is absolutely crazy how many people you can reach. I think if we all send a tweet now, or an Instagram or a Pinterest, I'm sure we can reach 1 million people within a few minutes. Just imagine how much you would have had to spend or plan or sort of raise in finance to actually reach 1 million people 20 years ago. You probably would have had to walk to your local newspaper here, and they would have sold you an ad, and that would have that would have set you back more than a smartphone cost you today. And I think we're also in this process of a quest for authenticity. Big brands are now looking into how can we become more authentic? How can we sort of satisfy consumers who are seeking a meaning and a brand they can trust again? And I think this has become a call to action for anyone who wants to be relevant in the next decade. So where are these designers, or where do these designers fit in? I think these designers fit in a digital environment where they just have to become available, and they need to share their content as well. And if we perhaps compare the traditional media to digital media, there's a couple of really interesting things. For example, in our office, I never hear the word consumer or customer. We always speak about collaborators. We always share our content. We have a curator in our online shop, so she selects the best pieces of designs that all these thousands of designers submit, and she says, well, I'm sharing that with our audience. And funnily, our customers or our collaborators then start sharing, they're talking with us, they're somehow feeding back. Last week I had a job interview of a customer who started contributing to us, so she started writing features because she's from Colombia, and now she's joining, we're going to hire her now next week. So this is a whole new form of sort of engaging with people. I think we have a global reach as well, and sometimes people say, well, the internet is so short-lived, it's so fast. The one feature, we have one editorial feature on Not Just a Label that is called the world of slow fashion, and it's the one feature that still amounts the most amount of traffic per month. And that feature has been published 4 years ago. So once again, maybe the internet or maybe the digital life is a bit more long-lived than the traditional media. And it is less expensive. The voice, of course, is the consumer, so maybe as brands we also have to let go sometimes and let our audience or brand ambassadors take our brand and share it with the world. In terms of luxury, I think we also have to look at a few fundamental drivers. We spoke about value for money. I think one of the big changes after the recession has been that consumers are now looking at what they're buying, or maybe a little bit more. I think we live in an age where value for money or the scrutiny of product is much more important again. Unfortunately, I come from a country where exactly the opposite is something we're really good at, fast fashion. 27 billion euros being spent on 2 million tons of clothing a year. The statistic I have on there is that on average, on the pieces that we buy on the high street, we wear them 4 times and then we throw them away in the UK. Now, before I came to Antwerp, there was a program on BBC on Sunday, and they were saying it's twice now, so we wear items only twice and throw them away. There was Sir Philip Green of Topshop being really proud that saying that we live in this celebrity-driven culture where if a celebrity wears a certain piece of clothing, they can have it in the stores in 19 days. So I think once again, we need to start thinking, are we actually paying the right price? If we buy a €2 t-shirt, who are we not paying? Or who are we not sort of taking care of? So these are all interesting and I think very important aspects that we need to start sharing with our audience, with our collaborators, because they're fundamental issues to keep in mind. And I think with that, the whole business change. We work with a lot of blue chip companies, and it's always really interesting when we come there, and I think in the first couple of meetings, we always feel like they're speaking a completely different language than us. The new firms are synergistic, collaborative, we just share, we do what we want. I always get the request, well, how do you make money if you just let everyone contact your designers how you want? Well, you know, we share the content, but then people come to us because we're much more authentic, we're much more dynamic, the form fits the function, and I think we adapt much better than an old firm, which maybe is more closed source, controlled, thinks also in a more short-term cash flow environment rather than the new companies. I've seen business plans that somehow project ideas for the next 20 years instead of the classic business plan with a sort of cash flow over the next 2 or 3 years. And I think businesses of the future have to become more social, more ecological, more synergistic. The firm of the future, I think, is social. The essence is social. So I think, after all, I think we need to start looking for familiar patterns in unrelated subjects. I think now is the time for us to sort of stand up and do something different. And as I always say, changing the world is not an option, it is an obligation, at least to try. Thank you very much.